So, my current video is taking longer than expected and I need to get something out, ideally by the end of October. And so I figured, since I just finished reading about 20-30 minutes ago the first issue of DCKO, I might as well talk about that. So DCKO is a current ongoing event. There's only one issue out currently, it came out this month, and basically it's this big tournament of DC characters just beating the crap out of each other and presumably other kinds of trials. It really is just a fighting game premise. We've even seen what the guest characters are going to be, right? Why are Homelander and Sub-Zero and Annabelle showed up in this? It's so strange. But at the end of the first issue, we see a big tournament bracket showing the 32 characters, and it's actually a pretty good roster. So here's your roster of 32 characters. It's actually really cool, although there's a bit of chicanery here. Read the first issue and then watch this video, because I need to spoil the fact that that's not Batman. That's the Joker. Because the Joker is confirmed to get through, and we watch Batman die. Everyone will come back at the end, it's fine, but everyone has to go through these portals, and there's only 32 slots. Everyone who doesn't make it through is gone. And so we have a really good roster for an actual fighting game. It's just, some of the characters here are not the ones you'd expect. So you think, okay, Green Lantern makes it in, and you expect Hal, or John, or Kyle maybe, but no, it's Guy. Guy Gardner made it in. The Flash, it's Jay Garrick. The Old Man, Oliver bites it pretty early, so Connor Hawke made it in. We still have Kal-El and we have Diana, of course, and then again, Bruce didn't make it. Instead, we have the Joker. But look at that, that's a pretty fucking good roster for a 32 roster fighting game. I don't know how Starro would work exactly. That could be fun if you had it like Starro's costumes are just different hosts. Well, here's one where he's attached to this character who didn't make it in. Oh, this one he's on Hal Jordan. Or this one he's on Lois Lane if you want to go a bit darker to match Injustice. This is a solid cast. I can't look at any of these characters and say I would leave them out. I think the biggest weakness is that there aren't many villains on here, which, to be fair, it's kind of the point, is the heroes lock the villains up so that they can't interfere, and it's all about the heroes fighting, and that's the core premise of the whole thing. So it's perfectly understandable that there aren't many villains in this thing. Overall, it's a cool roster. Like, if this was a fighting game by NetherRealm Studios, some characters who never really got the spotlight, like Giganta was a stage hazard in the first game. Now she could do some cool stuff with her. You got Big Barda. Always love seeing Barda here. Kate Kane made it in. Been a fan of her for a good number of years, and glad to see her getting some focus outside of her terrible TV show. And then there's some characters who here because, like, well, yeah, of course Harley's going to make it in, of course Lobo's going to make it in, and there is potential for characters getting in on popularity ruining this thing, but we'll see how this goes. I don't know why Power Girl and Supergirl are both here. That seems a bit random, although I do appreciate the fact they do have the Superman characters and the Batman characters together like this, because a lot of fighting game character selection screens can't do that right. That's a hint about what the video I'm making is. This is just taken from Bleeding Cool. It's not taken directly from the comic itself. There is a like red lipstick smile here over Batman. Then you realise Joker's not on here. That's how you can tell that Joker's going to be taking Batman's role. I'm going to go over this and try and predict who I think is going to make it through, how far the characters are going to get. I'm sure I'll get some of these wrong, because I reckon it's going to be kind of a mix of popular characters and, you know, realistic ones. So first off, there's no chance in hell that Giganta is beating Superman, because he's Superman, but also because the first issue is predominantly told from his perspective. He is technically the protagonist of this story, so even if he doesn't win the whole thing, which I'm sure he won't, that'll be a bit basic. Oh, I'm wearing a Superman shirt. Complete coincidence, I just happen to be wearing this. While I feel like it'd be a bit basic if he made it through and won the whole thing, you know, then it would just boil down to Superman's the one who gets the power, he fights Darkseid. There's a lot of stuff about this whole thing that kind of reminiscent in certain ways of Final Crisis, and, you know, Superman versus Darkseid again, I'd rather see something a bit more interesting. But I do think that because of how much focus Superman got on the fact that he's Superman, realistically he has to get at least this far, if not all the way up to the semi-finals. We don't know exactly how these contests will play out, because we know that the guest characters are going to show up. So if Sub-Zero is not on the tournament roster, how does he fit in? Will there be contests that are perhaps races or scavenger hunts or something? I imagine that would be something like that, so some characters have a higher chance of actually getting through than they realistically would. For example, let's be real, Harley Quinn is going to beat Metamorpho. She is an A-list character, she is so popular right now, she has been for a decade now. And Metamorpho, the mainstream knows Metamorpho because he was in the Superman movie. That's it. He's in like an episode of Young Justice Season 3, and I think just like the one outside of background shots. So I think Harley is basically guaranteed to win. Also because of this entire section of the bracket, which I guess I can focus on now, because I have thought about this. So Harley's obviously going to beat Metamorpho, and then who's going to win out of Zatanna and Barda? It's going to depend somewhat on a number of factors, like what kind of contest it is, and also that the preview image for issue 2, it shows Superman with a mace, which I think is Hawkgirl's. She didn't make it through here, but Hawkman did. We also see Harley with some lightning around her, which I think implies she's going to get the Speed Force, which it seems that some characters will gain abilities from others somehow, and that will kind of be how you even the odds, you know? I mean, that could be interesting for a fighting game, Harley Quinn with some Speed Force powers. Certainly more interesting than a Speed Force boomerang for traversal Captain Boomerang had that one time. So with Barda and Zatanna, I feel like it could go either way. That's one of the more even matchups. I mean, Superman versus Giganta, yeah, he'll struggle a bit because Giganta is tough, but realistically, she's not winning. There's no chance. Whereas here, it could be either one. But I also think it literally doesn't matter because they're going up against Harley Quinn, who not only is way more popular than either of those two, also, she's the one who has history with some of these characters. So whether it's Bruce or the Joker as Batman, let's be real, he's beating Star Sapphire, even though Joker, realistically, going up against Star Sapphire would get stomped. He would not stand a chance. But he's the Joker. He kind of just manages to get by. Maybe he'll actually have the power of Batman and he'll actually be able to kick people's asses here. I mean, that seems to be a thing they're doing, so he's basically guaranteed to beat Star Sapphire. And then we have Red Hood and Damian Wayne. Simply because the winner of this fight is going to go up against the Joker, and the winner of that fight will go up against Harley Quinn, it's going to be Red Hood. I think that Jason will beat Damian, maybe something will happen, maybe he'll see, oh, it's the Joker who's gone through. Sorry, Damian, you know, you're not ready for this, or I have to be the one to do it. However you want to approach their relationship, Jason's going to take Damian down and then fight the Joker. And because this story is part of the mainline continuity, they're referencing events from the start of the New 52 and just recent mainline events, this could be used to give Jason some closure. If he fights the Joker, and this is a place where people will come back when it's over, he can murder the Joker, move on, and then after this event, there might be some story where he kind of reflects on what he did. Maybe that will make him decide, I don't want to kill the Joker anymore, or I don't need to kill the Joker anymore. I've got my closure, I can move on. Maybe they've already done that. I have not heard that they've done that, because from what I've heard, DC has no idea what to do with Jason anymore. So this could be the opportunity he needs to move on. And while it's possible that he could lose to the Joker, I feel like Harley versus Red Hood has a bit more going on compared to Harley versus Joker. I mean, maybe it'll be that Harley is the one who gets some closure by getting to kill the Joker, but I think it's more likely that Jason will do it, and then he'll fight Harley. Some similarity with being victimized by the Joker. Where that goes from there, difficult to say. Although, just in terms of who gets to go through to this point, Joker almost seems the most likely. So from here it's difficult because, yes, these two having their face-off makes the most sense out of these matchups here. However, this is likely going to be Wonder Woman's spot because it's Wonder Woman. So the question then is, who's going to fight her? Harley or Red Hood? Now, I know Harley has been overexposed for a long time, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. It would be really fucking lame if Wonder Woman's penultimate fight was against Harley, or worse, if Harley beat Wonder Woman. I suppose it could depend on how the power stuff works, like, when you beat someone, do you get their power? So, like, if Harley beats Metamorpho, does she get Metamorpho's abilities? Could Zatanna or Barda show up with, like, the other one's powers, like, a really, like, super powerful magic-using Barda? Or the Joker with Star Sapphire powers? Of course, it's also possible that there is some kind of stupid twist that actually, no, the Joker is not going to be in the contest even though he made it through, and Batman is really Bruce because he had a contingency plan. But you do have to explain where the Joker is, so yeah. So even if her opponent wasn't Starro, I think Wonder Woman is guaranteed to go through and make it at least this far. It's very easy to imagine this will come down to Superman versus Wonder Woman, and I feel like if you're looking at this from an actual power scaling perspective, which would be a little less interesting, that's the way it would probably end up. Superman and Wonder Woman in the climax, just beating the shit out of each other. Now, Lobo and Plastic Man. I'm not actually that familiar with Plastic Man as far as what his actual abilities are, what he's capable of. I know Lobo's done some wild stuff, and he's very durable. Plastic Man is versatile, but I'm pretty sure not nearly as strong as Lobo. I imagine it would probably be Lobo that would go through, just because I think Wonder Woman can really go all out against him. I mean, they might want to make it a trickier thing and really test Diana's morals, where she has to kill Plastic Man. I think it's more likely that she'll fight Lobo. Pretty sure he's a bit more popular than Plastic Man, and this isn't going to be just about the emotional experience of the characters. There's also the spectacle. It's a tournament of superheroes. It's a tournament arc. Of course, there's going to be a lot of focus on characters being super powerful and just beating the shit out of each other. That's a must-have in this thing. I feel like Lobo could do that more compared to Plastic Man when the opponent is Wonder Woman. Now this part's trickier, because part of the issue with some of these characters included is that there is overlap in what they can do. Kate's abilities are fundamentally the same as Bruce's. It's just that she's generally more willing to kill someone, so that could give her an edge against Cyborg. Or she could get eliminated right away because Batman is still in the tournament. Or maybe she's there as a contingency because once Batman's identity is revealed, we need an actual Bat person. From that perspective, I do think Kate has the edge over Cyborg. You do expect to have the Trinity make a good way in, and if Bruce has been replaced by the Joker, then Kate kinda is the de facto Batman alternative since Nightwing isn't here. So without Nightwing, who's going to step up and fill Bruce's shoes? It has to be Kate, right? So Vixen and Swamp Thing. That's a tricky one, because I'm pretty sure that while Vixen's powers are very versatile, because she can mimic any kind of animal, and there could be some weird alien animal or something she can copy. I'm not sure if her powers can do that exactly, or if it's just Earth ones. It's Swamp Thing. But then again, they are at the centre of the Earth, so is the green weaker there, or is it actually stronger? It's really tricky to tell. This is probably one of the harder predictions based on how will the location and the surroundings influence what their abilities can do, because both characters are very much based around the environment to varying degrees. Swamp Thing is like the literal environment around him. Vixen, it's the wildlife that exists in the world. The external context is crucial to understand. Bless you. So the external context is key to understanding and predicting who is going to win here. Do I think that would really influence who would win against Batwoman? Probably not. But again, you can't just do the obvious picks. You can't just go, well, this character has to win for this reason, for power scaling reasons, or because they're such a popular character. I mean, these aren't all the A-listers. Some of these are B to C listers. Metamorpho is on this for you know, I don't know if he's gotten a big push in the comics lately, but that's the kind of character that you'd want to get a bit further than normal to really give him a big push. I'm going to predict Vixen, because I'm thinking Swamp Thing would probably be more influenced by the environment they're in specifically compared to Vixen, but I could be wrong. Maybe they'll want to go for like a Batwoman or Cyborg versus a big monster man. Swamp Thing could be corrupted by the coming arrival of Darkseid, you know, to make him more monstrous, even if he's not like mentally changed. But I think realistically it's going to be that, and then this will kind of, not necessarily intentionally, but kind of become the women tier, the one where Wonder Woman's going to fight the best other woman. So who would go on to fight Wonder Woman out of Batwoman and Vixen? I don't know how Bat God Kate is at this point in the comics. Is she Bat Demigod? Is she even comparable at all? Would it just be like a more realistic fight where, yeah, the person with the animal powers is just gonna stomp? I feel like Vixen just about has the edge. Partly because Kate is not Batman, so she's not like guaranteed to go through the way he would be if he was here. But also, again, you do want to have more varied fights. You want to have something more interesting than what is essentially Wonder Woman versus Batman. You know, we've seen that kind of stuff plenty of times. Wonder Woman versus Vixen is done a lot less often. It would be a good opportunity to give a character like Vixen a bit more spotlight, because, you know, she never got her own show. I mean, she had like an animated miniseries for the Arrowverse, but the thing then is, if Vixen or Kate fought Wonder Woman, I still think Wonder Woman would win. I still think that Diana, just because she's Diana, is basically guaranteed to get through to the semi-finals. And I think the same will probably be said of Superman, but we'll get to that in a minute. And then on this end, Red Hood versus Harley Quinn. What's the more interesting fight? I don't know what you can really do with a fight between Wonder Woman and Red Hood, or Wonder Woman and Harley Quinn. But then how interesting could a fight between those two and Vixen be? Like, I'm sure a good writer could make an interesting fight out of it, but all this stuff feels a bit too disconnected to a point, and in terms of the abilities, like, it's just not a realistic matchup. Like, Jason and Harley, without like a massive power boost, are not beating Diana. Because the story opens with Diana, Clark, and Bruce playing a board game, and this is kind of how the story's kind of centered. The idea that Clark has to view this as a game is Bruce's like final message to him. You have to view this as a game, and that's the only way you're going to mentally get through this. Because Diana was part of that, I feel like she has significance in the story, so she and Clark are very likely to make it all the way through to the final, which will be so dull. I feel like you have to have a twist or a swerve in there somewhere where someone else gets through, but realistically, based on the characters that are present here and who's likely to make it to certain matchups, I feel like Harley would probably win just out of popularity, and then her versus Wonder Woman. I hope they don't do something stupid like have Harley Quinn win this. Like, if it was an actual fighting game and there was a story mode where you could pick a character and go through and Harley could win and that would be fine. But when you have the one story, I mean, that would be hilarious if it was like you get to the end of the tournament and it's like, this is the final issue. Go play DCKO, the fighting game by NetherRealm Studios. And that's what you have to do. That would be terrible. But yeah, I think Diana's making it all the way through. Back onto the part where I should have started realistically. Captain Atom versus Power Girl. So Power Girl has been restored to being Earth 2 Supergirl, I'm pretty sure. That not happened, but I don't know if they've changed it since, but I've not heard of that happening, so I'm pretty sure it's still a version of Kara. Which does make it weird that there's another version of Kara here. So the question is, at what point is Clark going to be challenged and have to effectively kill a version of his cousin? Now, this is one of those that's actually a struggle because you have the emotional fight of Power Girl versus what I imagine would probably be more of a spectacle, Captain Atom. It's really tricky to figure out what they want to go for because, again, Superman's kind of the POV character, he's the central figure, and so it really just feels like a lot of his fights are going to be about this journey he's going to go on. Whereas some characters are going to have, this is just an interesting plot line, you know, Red Hood gets to kill the Joker or what have you. So it's a case of, are they going to challenge Superman emotionally so early on, or are they going to push that to later? Because from what I understand, the purpose of the guest characters is basically to push the characters into killing. A character like Superman, who very, very rarely kills people because he doesn't want to do it, of course. Will they have it that he has to do that early on? Or maybe Captain Atom will kill Power Girl and that will piss off Superman and he'll be like, I'm going to kill you. I can't do it. But then he'll have like a big emotional one later. I think that's probably how it's going to go. Power Girl, you can get rid of her early on because you also have Supergirl. You know, it's like I said earlier, Batman is actually the Joker, so you don't actually have two of the same character, whereas if the Joker wasn't here and it was actually Bruce, then Kate would be gone in the first round, no question, because that's just two of the same person in terms of abilities, really. So I think Kara-Zor letter L is going out first round. Now, Guy Gardner and Firestorm. Maybe I'm just Marvel-brained because, you know, the MCU has kind of dominated the discussion over the last decade. The way they approach things is everything has to tie into the movie. So if a character gets a big role in a movie, you can tell that's going to affect the comics as well. Like, the Guardians of the Galaxy just started showing up in all these Earth-based events when previously they just stayed the fuck away. They were just not involved in any of this stuff. But now they're in Civil War 2 and all this other stuff. So Guy got a big role in the latest Superman movie. I assume he's going to show up in the Lanterns film. It would be weird if he didn't. Guy Gardner's getting like the biggest push that he ever has in the mainstream, and so I could see that being an excuse for him to beat Firestorm. Plus, you know, Star Sapphire is the other Lantern character, and she's going to get easily, whether it's Bruce or Joker, go out in the first round, so maybe you want to keep a guy with that power around. But what does Firestorm bring to the table? I'm not as familiar with Firestorm, I'll be honest, but I really feel like Guy's got the best chance of making it through, partly because of his existing multimedia push. Now, Jay Garrick and Cheetah. Realistically, it's a wash. But of course, you don't want to have too many heroes go through and then there's not enough villains, because otherwise, what is the point of the villains even being here? The point of the villains is to cause chaos, right? They are the X factor that is thrown into the story to make things a bit more interesting than the heroes. It adds new dynamics compared to just all the heroes being like, oh, how I can't kill my good friend, oh no. Oh no. But yeah, I just don't see Cheetah making it through. I feel like realistically, unless you get some way to kind of bullshit her way through this, or Jay being old becomes a major factor, I think Jay is just gonna absolutely just wash Cheetah. Even though they do paint Cheetah as like a big deal, these villains are here because they were locked up together, because they were like the biggest threats that the heroes had to get rid of. You know, it's like Starro, Lex Luthor. It's really weird to put the Joker there because I know he's Batman's greatest enemy, but he's just a clown, okay? He's not a genius. He's not a mind-controlling parasite. He's not some powerful cheetah lady. He's just a clown, right? Stop giving Harley and Joker such massive power levels. It's ridiculous. So who would go through and lose to Superman? I feel like it's going to depend on the history, because this Superman is like... Okay, so Superman here, it's the pre-New 52 version brought into the New 52 universe during Rebirth. His New 52 counterpart died and the two merged together and he took over that version's life. But then, I think it was in Dark Knight's Death Metal, or one of the other events with similar names, everyone remembers the old multiverse versions of themselves and has their memories from those. Does that mean that this Superman has memories of Earth 2 original Superman, who was in the Justice Society with Jay? Which one's going to really cause him trouble? Because this is where you have to have a big emotional point, right? And I think out of all these, it probably would be Jay. Not only does he have the super speed, the Flash should be faster than Superman. Clark has to get his hands on him. But also, I feel like him having to kill Jay would be the more resonant one. I mean, unless he's just going to try and resist the whole time, but it really becomes a question of who's going to get to the end, because I feel like there are only 2 characters in this last quadrant who realistically are going to make it through. Like, you look at these characters, and I want you to guess who you think I'm looking at and going, these 2 are realistically the only ones getting through. So Aquaman versus King Shark. Now, I'm not sure how powerful King Shark is because depictions in other media are all over the place. I know he's like a demigod or something in the comics, but then you see stuff like versions where he's just a shark man or just a dude with like a bear trap basically for a jaw. There's all different takes on King Shark. Can he beat Aquaman? I'm sure he can, but do I think he will? No, I honestly think Aquaman is just going to win. I think it's one of those fights where it's going to be tough for the characters to win, but in terms of who's actually going to win, it's pretty much guaranteed to be Aquaman. Then you have Hawkman and Connor Hawke, which... did they pair those up because Hawk is in the name? Unless Connor Hawke can do something really interesting, I feel like as a legacy hero, one of like the younger ones, he's probably just not going to beat Hawkman. Now, unfortunately, I don't think the Aquaman and Hawkman fight is going to matter at all. I'm sure it could be interesting, you know, Sea versus Sky. I'm not sure how close the 2 are in this continuity, but I'm sure there's something interesting you can do character-wise, but that fight just doesn't matter, simply because, be honest, do you think Lex Luthor is going to lose to Black Lightning, or that Supergirl's going to lose to Etrigan the Demon on a good day? Never mind in a scenario where the winner of these 2 fights will fight each other, so you get Lex versus Supergirl. Like, maybe they'll want to do Lex versus Etrigan, but I just don't see that happening. It's gonna be Lex versus Supergirl. Now, the winner of this is obviously going to go on to defeat Aquaman or Hawkman, doesn't matter who. The question is, who's going to get through to Superman? Will it be that this will be the big turning point where Clark has to kill Kara? I'll say this. If my prediction about him fighting Captain Atom is wrong and it's Power Girl, Supergirl will absolutely not get through, because there's no need to have Clark kill 2 versions of Kara. And one could say that with Captain Atom killing Kara and how that was set Clark off, if Supergirl is killed by Lex, then Superman versus Lex Luthor is kind of retreading the same ground. So it would be neat if it was he kills the guy who killed his cousin and then he has to kill his cousin himself. But because it's Lex isn't just any old villain. You know, this isn't like if, say, Joker killed Dick Grayson and then Batman was like, I'm going to kill you. This is Lex. So it's very easy to imagine that the narrative is going to be Lex gets an understanding of what's going on and he's like, okay, I'm going to kill Supergirl and then I'm going to taunt Superman so that Superman will fight at his absolute best and he will kill me. No, he'll be forced to kill, so now you can put that sissy hero bullshit aside and he'll be ready to go on and do what's needed after all this. Or alternatively, let Kara go through to force Clark to kill her. So I feel like either way, the result of this fight is not going to be based on who is the best per se. It's based on how Lex wants it to play out. Does he want to kill Kara to enrage Superman enough to kill him? Or does he want to force Kara to go through so that Clark will have to kill her? Because again, you know, realistically, is Supergirl going to lose to Hawkman or Aquaman? It could happen. I could easily see a scenario where that would happen, but in this particular story, because of the needs of the narrative, all these fight results are all leading up to bullet points on Clark's journey throughout this. That's what it's all going to be about. So if Supergirl gets through, she's stomping the shit out of whoever it is that she has to fight. So that's the tricky part, is Lex or Kara is going to go through, beat whoever wins this fight. Most likely it will be Lex. It's just seemed like the kind of thing that would happen, and it is a little less interesting. I would love to be wrong, but I do feel like no matter how it plays out, Clark is going to be confronted with the realities of the death of his cousin, whether that's having to kill Power Girl and then fight Lex later, or you'll have to kill Captain Atom who killed Kara, and then he'll have to kill his own Kara when Supergirl gets through, or kind of just repeat the same thing again. You know, maybe Clark will be like, oh no, I killed Kara. I am no better than Captain Atom, you know? Because Captain Atom is from my experience, he's a dick in a lot of the stories he's in. But I think it's really going to come down to Superman versus Wonder Woman, and then Superman will win. They might pull out something else, but I mean, he's here front and center. It's one of those unfortunate things where you take this narrative and you focus on the guy who's always the focus of this stuff. It's always Superman, you know? It's like, if you're going to do a Marvel version of this and it was Marvel Knockout, you'd focus on Captain America, I'm sure, or maybe like a super popular character like Spider-Man. But I feel like with that, it would be Captain America. It's more plausible for Superman to get all the way through. But I feel like Cap is generally like not as central to these big universe overhauling events the way Superman is. Superman kind of always is the center of everything. I mean, you'll go to Infinite Crisis and Crisis on Infinite Earths and Final Crisis, and I think pretty sure Death Metal as well, even though a lot of the stuff focused on Batman. Superman's always at the center. Will this be any different? Realistically, probably no, but I think it would be really cool if they did a swerve like if Kara won. It might not be all that satisfying if Clark goes through this big journey and it's like, I just can't beat Kara. But although I do think that, given the way Kara's origin works in the New 52, the idea that she's actually older than him, that could be a really interesting direction, depending on how she feels about Clark at the in present. That could be a really good moment where she's like, it's okay, Clark, I'll do this. She will take her role as his protector, his older cousin, and she'll kill him and go through and win this because he can't bring himself to do it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Superman is just going to kill a version of Kara, kill someone who has killed Kara, and then go on and defeat Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman giving him like the last push he needs to go on and save the universe, and then Superman will become like the big ultimate Omega King, defeat Darkseid, and maybe they'll even do a thing where like when Darkseid wins, like everyone becomes part of the Darkseid collective. So I wonder if it'll be that when Clark defeats him, everyone will temporarily become part of the Superman hive mind. Everyone is now imbued with hope, because that's like a big thing that the movies are trying to push, like Superman is hope in a dark world. I don't know if the current DCU really needs that. Like if this was New 52 or New Earth, it'd be vital for those universes to survive, because no. But I think they're going to try to do something thematic with Superman that could be similar to what James Gunn's doing in the films, maybe something different. I don't know how much influence James Gunn has on the comics, if any at all, but I could definitely see something like that happening. And honestly, I would love to see this be turned into a game. I would love to see this roster in a game, because I do think it's very lopsided. In my upcoming video, I will be giving Injustice 1 a little bit of praise for how its roster is perfectly balanced between heroes and villains, and this is very much not that. But if there was a DC fighting game with this exact roster, I'm sure some people would be like, you know, I don't want Connor Hawke, I want Oliver Queen. I get that. But it's always good to let the other characters get a shot. You don't want to have the same roster over and over again. You want to have some variety, and this is a lot of variety. I think this is a solid roster, and it'd be cool to see this not as part of Injustice, but as its own thing, a new universe that we're exploring. And then you could have a version of Damian who doesn't suck complete ass. You'd have Power Girl on the roster and actually explore the differences between her and Supergirl. I'm sure the actual lineup of the fights would be completely different in an actual game. I'm sure the Karas would fight each other as rival fights. Basically guaranteed, because that's an interesting matchup. Weirdly enough, that is just, it's not just dude versus dude with the same power, it's literally dude versus dude but older, and somehow that's a really interesting matchup. Yeah, I think DCKO is pretty neat. They did do that thing where they kill off Billy Batson in child form. Stop fucking doing this. This is the third time I know of. I'm sure it's happened more, and some of those ones have been depicted in multiple different versions of the stories. Please stop killing Billy Batson as a child. It's not clever, it's not shocking anymore, it's just tired. But I put it to you, do you think my predictions are right? Do you think I'm way off base? Are you more familiar with the current goings on in the comics, and you go, well, actually this would be a factor that you're not familiar with and that would change the outcome here? Or these stories would be a bit more interesting, like this character fighting this character. And also, looking at this roster, what do you think of this as a fighting game roster of 32 base roster characters? Of course, you can imagine that the 6 guests, 6 DLC guest characters, including Sub-Zero and Homelander, who already have moveset bases in the latest Mortal Kombat, so you have that. Do you think this would be a good base roster, and who would you add? If you're going to add a handful of other characters to this roster, trying to avoid characters who are just the same thing but a little different, as much as possible, who would you add as like 6 normal DC characters? Assuming we're going to get 6 DC, 6 guests, right? Who would you add? What would you put onto this roster to make it even better? I was a little disappointed when John Constantine showed up in the Vision, and then he's nowhere to be seen after. He would be great. He would go so hard on this roster. But I just know that if he was in this event, they would do something really fucking lame and have him lose to like Harley Quinn or something. And no one giving Harley a lot of shit, but DC needs to understand that Clown Girl with bat or mallet is not realistically going to take on any of these dudes, and it's actually not that interesting for her to do so. It's just weird, okay? She's popular, keep her in her fucking lane, okay? She wouldn't beat Metamorpho, let alone Big Barda or Zatanna, and she's certainly not going to beat Wonder Woman. But I wouldn't put it past DC to do that, because DC is very silly, let's put it that way. And I've rambled long enough. I've been recording for almost 50 minutes now. I'm going to stop. And go pledge to my Patreon. You get early access for just $1. I'm going to keep that going for at least another month, maybe to the end of the year, we'll see. But even videos like this, unscripted ones, are going on Patreon as well now. Hopefully that's more of an incentive and more value for money. Please do that. Find people here, wherever they are. They're probably running right over me right now, I don't know. And hopefully DCKO will not wet the bed at the last minute. Hopefully this will be a cool story with some cool ideas to explore. Other than the twist they've... Well, it's not really a twist, but there's a bit they've set up at the end of the issue. I don't really like that. I'd rather Booster Gold just be part of the story. No, why is Booster Gold not just part of the story? Booster Gold's cool. Why are you doing this? Come on. He would be one of the DLC characters for sure. Because he's got that movie coming up and stuff like this, yeah. I said I stopped rambling. I was rambling for 2 more minutes. 3 even. Bye.